Anneliese Michel was born in 1952 in a small town called Klingenberg in Bavaria, Germany. She grew up in a family that was very religious, following the Catholic faith closely. Everyone liked Anneliese because she was smart and friendly. When she was 16 years old, in September 1968, something strange happened to Anneliese. She suddenly passed out and couldn't remember anything about it. That night, she felt as if someone or something was pushing her down into her bed and she couldn't move. Almost a year later, a similar scary event happened again. This time, her mother took her to see two doctors, Dr. Vogt and a brain doctor named Dr. Luthi. They checked her health using a machine that can look at brain activity or EEG and other tests. But they couldn't find anything wrong. They thought maybe she was having seizures, but they weren't sure. Over the next 3 years, Anneliese had more of these scary moments. The doctors gave her medicine to try to stop these episodes, including one called Dilantin. Even though they kept checking her brain activity, the tests didn't show a clear reason for her problems. Things got even weirder in the spring of 1973. Anneliese started hearing knocking sounds in her room, and her sisters heard them too. She also heard a voice telling her she was going to hell. One time, her family saw her looking at a statue of the Virgin Mary with eyes that had turned completely black, and her hands looked like animal paws with claws. In September 1973, Anneliese told Dr. Luthi that she was seeing faces of demons and felt like the devil was inside her. She also smelled something terrible, like burned poop, and others smelled it later too. Her mom told the doctor about all these strange things, and he suggested they talk to a Jesuit priest, though he later said he didn't suggest that. Despite this, Anneliese's family looked for help from a priest and found Father Alt. In November 1973, a psychiatrist thought Anneliese might have a mental health issue along with possible epilepsy. Another brain doctor saw signs of epilepsy in her tests and changed her medicine to a stronger one called Tegretol. By July 1975, Anneliese's actions became very odd. She didn't sleep much and prayed all night. She did things like eating spiders and flies and licking up her urine from the floor. She also broke religious items like rosaries and pictures of saints. Anneliese showed unusual strength too. She could throw her sisters across the room easily and crush an apple into pieces with just one hand. These events were very hard on Anneliese and her family. They were dealing with something that seemed beyond normal sickness. Anneliese's story is about a young woman and her family trying to find answers to something that was very hard to understand, mixing both medical and spiritual questions. Father Roderick, who was very knowledgeable about exorcisms, believed that Anneliese Michel was under the influence of evil spirits. He talked with a bishop and they decided to allow an exorcism, choosing Father Renz to do it. The first exorcism happened on September 24, 1975. Father Renz decided to record these sessions and he ended up making 42 recordings. I'm going to play some parts of these recordings for you, but I need to warn you, they might be very scary to listen to.
Dat wat die lief is.
Ja, maar het gibt neue
Für Hass.
Ja.
Weil für Hass ist, da gibt's keine Ruhe.
Nein. Und für uns gibt's nie Ruhe. Nie.
Weil,
Ewigkeit.
weil er nicht dorthin kommt.
Anneliese mentioned a demon named Fleshman during the exorcism. Fleshman was a priest in the 1500s who got kicked out of the church for doing bad things. The details Anneliese gave about Fleshman was surprisingly accurate, which shocked Father Alt. He couldn't understand how Anneliese could know such specific things about someone from so long ago. As time went by, Anneliese started to get worse. She would hit her head against the wall and bite herself and sometimes others. Her family had to tie her up to stop her from hurting herself more. Even more worrying was that Anneliese stopped eating. She said she wasn't allowed to eat. Even though she was very thin, probably less than 80 pounds, she was still very strong when people tried to hold her back. By June, Anneliese looked even more unhealthy. Her face was very thin and she didn't want any doctor to see her, even though she had a very high fever. On June 30, during another exorcism, she only said, "Please, absolution." The next day, her family found her dead. At first, Anneliese and her family had tried to get help from doctors, but later they put all their hope in the exorcisms to cure her. Sadly, she died from not eating at the age of 23 after going through 67 exorcisms. She weighed only 68 pounds when she died. In 1978, after Anneliese Michel passed away, her parents and 2 priests were charged with negligent homicide. This led to a court case that showcased 2 distinct viewpoints. On one side, the defense argued that Anneliese's condition, evidenced by eyewitness accounts and audio recordings, suggested she was possessed, a concept the court didn't seriously consider. They further contended that Anneliese had the legal right to refuse medical treatment. This refusal could have prevented methods like tranquilization, force feeding, or electroshock therapy, which would have been against her wishes. A family friend, Thea Hine, during her testimony, mentioned that Anneliese had earnestly requested her not to seek medical help several months before her demise. Moreover, the defense highlighted that Father Alt did attempt to secure medical advice as Anneliese's condition worsened. Dr. Richard Roth, associated with Father Alt, visited Anneliese, driven by scientific curiosity rather than medical duty. He reported not seeing any visible injuries on her, a statement that conflicted with Father Wren's observations of bruises, a swollen cheek, and black eyes on Anneliese. Dr. Roth had also disputed claims that he had remarked on the efficacy of medical treatments against demonic possessions. The trial took an interesting turn when the autopsy findings revealing Anneliese's brain was healthy, showing no signs of damage that could lead to epileptic seizures, not even under microscopic examination. Additionally, the court seemed to disregard peculiar details such as Anneliese's abnormally dilated pupils and the absence of ulcers typically seen in starvation victims. These overlooked facts added layers of complexity to the case, underscoring the ongoing conflict between spiritual belief systems and medical science, while also touching on the contentious issue of an individual's rights to refuse medical care. The prosecution's stance was that Anneliese Michel suffered from epilepsy and psychosis, accusing her parents and 2 priests of neglecting to save her life. They dismissed any claims of possession and cast doubt on Father Alt's reliability, pointing out that 2 experts believe Father Alt showed signs of schizophrenia. They presented the argument that the medications administered to Anneliese effectively controlled her seizures. This control, they suggested, led to a delusional psychosis associated with epilepsy. The prosecution believed that the exorcisms worsened Anneliese's mental state by reinforcing her delusions. Highlighting the complexity of her condition, they noted that Anneliese sometimes acted normally between exorcisms. While she displayed signs of possession during the rites, it was uncertain whether the seizures ceased due to medication or stopped spontaneously. Moreover, they pointed out that Anneliese had experienced psychotic episodes before any supposed medical intervention. Ultimately, the court sided with the prosecution. The 4 accused were sentenced to mixed months in jail, suspended for 3 years, and were ordered to pay all legal fees. The judgment emphasized that Anneliese could not make her own health decisions and should have been compelled to undergo medical treatment. Professor Felicitas D. Goodman, who wrote about the case, remarked that the court treated the epilepsy theory as an absolute truth rather than a hypothesis. Despite the court's decision, the cause of Anneliese Michel's death remains a topic of debate. Questions linger on whether her demise resulted from a mental disorder such as epilepsy or if she truly experienced demonic possession. The tragedy of Anneliese Michel's case continues to puzzle and provoke discussion, leaving its mystery unresolved. What do you believe happened to Anneliese Michel? Was she sick, possessed, or was it something else? Let us know in the comments below. And if you have any scary encounters, share your experiences with us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Fearflix for more videos like this. Thanks for watching and see you at the next one.